Hello, this is Creepy Stories, and I'm here with another story for you.
My small, lovable village's harmonious everyday life was suddenly stirred up by horrific events. In our village of just 1,000 inhabitants, the news spread like wildfire, and more people whispered that a child murderer was wreaking havoc in the previously undisturbed settlement. 6 bodies were attributed to him, at least according to the official police reports. That's how many young corpses were found on the sides of the roads, at various points in the village. It was also whispered that only the almost unmanageable cases were made public. The rest were tried to be kept secret to avoid a huge panic outbreak. There were also lucky survivors among the young ones, who the guy had set his eyes on. They unanimously reported that a man who covered his face with some kind of silky veil tried to lure them to his car. In most cases, he flattered the children with lollipops, but it was reported that he also used other sweet delicacies. Then, if they didn't go to his car, he started making aggressive gestures. There was a strong disagreement about the type and color of the car, as these incidents mostly happened after dark. So in an already very shocked situation, it was not easy to make out the exact color of the vehicle. One thing, however, became certain. The village, once adored as a hotbed of goodness, was suddenly replaced by uncertainty and distrust. This combination of two concepts began to slowly and insidiously tear apart the local community. Everyone looked at each other with a slant. No one trusted anyone, and no one left the house after dark. For a 12-year-old teenager stepping into the first stages of his age, like I was then, this was a pretty dangerous time. I lived in the village with my grandfather, in a pretty big shack, who stipulated that I should get home before dark. Due to my rebellious character, I often ignored his warning words. Every day until 9 p.m., we kicked the leather on the nearby completely abandoned football field. For a while, there was no problem with me coming home late. I thought that from the approximately 700 meters between my grandfather's house and the football field, nothing could happen on such a short stretch of road, which I can walk in 10 minutes. One evening, however, things turned out differently. I overstayed myself more than usual, so I set off at a much slower pace towards our house. About 7 minutes could have passed, but I was still only halfway. My legs started to cramp from all the football, and I had to sit down. It must have been around 9:30 in the evening, and the long street without public lighting was terrifyingly silent. Only the rustling of the withered leaves could be heard. On the soundless stretch of road, I thought I could hear my increasingly heated heartbeat. Unfortunately, I sat down at a deserted, uninhabited point on the street. The deathly silence and the endless darkness were soon replaced by engine noise and a pair of dazzling headlights. I was just crouching helplessly on the sidewalk, my legs aching, and hoping that this car is not what I think it is. As the lights of the lamp got closer and closer to me, the panic only intensified. Every second seemed like centuries. The puffing vehicle slowly lined up with me and braked. A big man jumped out of it. From his upset gaze, I could feel the misery and disgust that he was grazing me with. I couldn't even speak. I gathered all my strength and jumped up from the edge of the sidewalk and started running towards my grandfather's house, shouting for help. I didn't dare look back at the guy, but I heard him get back in the car, and fueled by violent emotions, he slammed the car door, then started it. I dragged myself on the sidewalk as much as I could with my weakened legs. Soon after, the man caught up, and from behind the lowered window, he started yelling at me to get in with him and trust him because I'm making a huge mistake if I don't. He shouted that he only wants good for me and I will get a reward if I give up what he called meaningless escape. I didn't listen to him. I knew I was only about 50 meters from my home. However, my legs suddenly collapsed, and it was difficult to keep my consciousness from the pain. The guy stopped the car again and jumped out of it, then ran to the trunk and opened it. I felt that the end had come, but then my grandfather, hearing the screaming, ran out onto the street with his gun and shot the man chasing me in the shoulder. The man, dizzy from the pain, continued to yell at me. Something like that I will regret this very much because I didn't get in his car and that I made the worst decision of my life. My grandfather then fired another bullet into the man, but this time it knocked him down. We alerted the police, then told them everything. The village, of course, celebrated my grandfather and me as heroes days after the events, because we finally managed to catch the serial killer. However, unexpectedly, the chief of police who was investigating the case appeared in our house and came up with a very interesting fact about the man who was stalking and chasing me. He was a private detective who, according to a preliminary statement, was just looking for the child murderer lurking in the village. He had never had a police case before. He treated children extremely well. One could say he had an immaculate past. Therefore, the authorities did not know what to think of the man's unacceptable behavior. After the chief of police left the house, I went up to my room, and it crossed my mind that maybe he was not the perpetrator of the terrible murders. But then what could he have wanted from me? And why was he so upset and violent? But before I could think about it more, my grandfather called from the basement. "Just come down to the basement, little grandson. I brought you some of that delicious lollipop."
Thank you for watching. Have a great life and watch your back.